Also live stream it, please. Yeah. Dheeraj, you can live stream it. Okay. Namaste to all of you. A very warm welcome to this evening's program. Friends, it gives me a lot of pleasure to invite Zumretay Erkin to our call today, this evening. She's a Uyghur activist. And before I introduce her and the topic today, it has been a great period that we have gone through in spite of the unfortunate coronavirus, Chinese Wuhan coronavirus lockdown we all went through for the past 3 months. Pragna Bharati was fortunate enough to have a lot of intellectuals coming and speaking on our platform continuously for the past 3 months, be it on the English platform or on the Telugu platform between our Karimnagar and Hyderabad units. We have done more than 150 webinars till now. And most of you have been supporting us, all through. But we understand that after the unlockdown period, people have got back to their businesses and their works. And so there is a certain degree of sluggishness, we understand that. However, we thought we'll continue with this yagna of intellectual churning. And so we are doing selectively 3 times a day in English and 4 times the rest of the week in Telugu. That's how we are trying to plan this out. So the English programs would be on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and Telugu programs would be on the rest of the days. Friends, for those of you who have come for the first time to this show today, a brief introduction about Pragna Bharati. Pragna Bharati has been an organization fighting for an Indian way of looking at things from an intellectual perspective. It is an intellectual forum working among intellectuals for the past 28 years. It was founded by 5 signatories, the chairman being Dr. T. Hanuman Chowdhury. He is a former chairman of VSNL, Videsh Sanchar Nigam Limited, and he was a former advisor to the government of Andhra Pradesh on IT affairs. He's a Padma Shri awardee. He's our chairman. And then Ram Madhavji, who is now currently the National General Secretary of Bharatiya Janata Party. And Shri B.S. Sharmaji, a pharmaceutical professional. And 2 great stalwarts who are no more with us, Vakati Panduranga Raoji and Harihara Sharmaji. So these 5 people had started Pragna Bharati almost 28 years back. And for the past 28 years, a lot of intellectual churning and, trying to bring people to the nationalistic way of looking at things without being covered or colored by lobbies and vested interests. Pragna Bharati has come a very long way. We also run a monthly English magazine by name Bharatiya Pragna. So kindly do subscribe to it. And the last 3 months issues are going to be posted in the coming week. Already it's ready for dispatch. So I would request all of you those of you who have not subscribed to it, kindly do subscribe to it. And also I request you to subscribe to all our social media assets, our Twitter handle Pragna Bharati, our Facebook page Pragna Bharati, and also our Instagram, and we have a Telegram account as well, and YouTube channel. Kindly do subscribe to all of them, and you could catch up with all our previous webinars. They're all saved and uploaded in our YouTube channel. So kindly be in touch with us through the email ID that has been provided to you, info@pragnabharati.in. Friends, it gives me great pleasure to invite today Zumretay to give her perspective of what is happening with the Uyghurs of Xinjiang. Xinjiang is also called as East Turkestan. And before she speaks about this particular thing, I would give a brief introduction about this place pertaining to its connections with Bharat. Friends, the Tarim Basin of the Xinjiang or East Turkestan, whatever we want to call that, this is the westernmost part of the legal country of China today, which is almost north of Tibet. This area has been called as Kashmir's twin, but somehow we seem to have forgotten about it as much as the people there seem to have forgotten about their Indic connections. So it's probably a time for us to brush up a little bit of its ancient history. Before Islam came in, before the Mongols or Turks came in, what was the history of that particular region? It was called as Uttara Kuru. So probably there are scholars who say Uyghur is a derivative from this term Uttara Kuru. Uttara Kuru was mentioned even by people like Megasthenes, Strabo, Ptolemy, and so many others used this term called Uttara Kuru for this particular region. Uttara Kuru, as you all know, is a distant cousin of Shantanu, and so they have blood relationships as well. And this word Uttara Kurase is a term used in Tocharian texts of the ancient Tocharian text as well. So there is a connection to say that this is Uttara Kuru. And then Arjuna, when Yudhishthira was doing Rajashu Yaga, Arjuna went to Uttara Kuru and collected tribute from them. So there is mention of Uttara Kuru being part of Mahabharata as well. In fact, it is even mentioned in Aitreya Brahmana of the Vedas. And then there is mention about Uttara Kuru even in Ramayana. This particular territory had a republic. Way back, thousands of years back, 3,000-4,000 years back, it had a republic. It was not run by a king. It was not a kingdom. So in our Sanskrit parlance, we have different types of governance. Sambrajyancha, Virajancha, Vairajyancha, Parameshchagam, Maharajam, Adipatcham. Like that, we have different types of governance. It could be democracy, it could be dictatorship. So it's a republic. So the examples of Vairajya is one of the examples is Uttara Kuru. So it was a republic which had grand culture way back in thousands of years back. Buddhist texts also mention a lot about these places. And in fact, Buddhism was prevalent just before the Islamic invasion of this particular land. Lalitaditya Muktipida, who was the king of Kashmir, he conquered these lands along with many other campaignings that he did in Bactria, in Afghanistan, today's Afghanistan, and northern Iran. All these areas was under his kingdom, right up to the Odisha basin, the Ganges plain. The entire kingdom was in his control. Lalitaditya Muktipida. Then you also have a mention about this in Pushan Empire. Pushans were again somebody who came from, it was a part Mongolic tribe. They came from this region. And so their empire extended to this particular region as well. And there were a lot of Buddhist monasteries, established here. And a lot of people from Kashmir went there to teach Buddhism, and Buddhism spread there extensively. During the Kushan period and immediately after Kushan period, many of today's towns came up in this particular place, like Kashgar, Khotan, Turfan, Kucha, Nia, Lolan. All these were founded just around the time of Kushan. This is about 2nd century AD, around that time. That means Islam came around 6th, 7th century, or even later to that. We are talking about 400-500 years before that. Buddhism spread extensively in this area. This area has what you see, all the Chinese products, the green material with which they make their idols and all that, ornate or jade kind of a stone. It is extensively available in this particular region. So this is the ancient history. I'm not getting into the current history, how it fell into the Chinese territory. I will leave that to Zumretay to talk about it. And I mean, after the King dynasty took over this particular region, what happened to it? Just to suffice to say that this had two parts in it. The northern part was called Zungaria, and the southern part was called, it was East Turkestan. So both these parts were merged by the king about, Chinese king about 200-300 years back, and he called it Xinjiang. And I know the meaning of Xinjiang, but I will let her speak about it. Otherwise, I would be letting the cat out of the bag. So she will probably speak about it. Friends, this is the Indic connection that we have. The ancient language of this particular land had many signs, many words from our Sanskrit, Pali, or Prakritic kind of words available in their literature even today. But the sad part of it is the current generation, the current population there is completely lost connect with the ancient civilization. So it is time that everybody, both from their side as well as from our side, from Indian side, we rediscover our connection. It just could not be that we were not connected while we are just a mountain away. Just cross the mountain and you are into Kashgar, you are into East Turkestan, and yet you are saying that for thousands of years we had no connection is impossible. So those connections that we had need to be revisited and re-established. We were closer to them, they were closer to us than they were closer to China. Obviously, China had nothing to do with them. China is an occupying force there. And but whereas India, we never occupied these countries, but our culture pervaded all these places, be it the pre-Buddhist cultures or the Buddhist culture. Post that, of course, the Mongol and Turkic invasions happened and they all converted to Islam, but still they retain a distinct culture, unique of their own rights. Friend, Zumretay is a program advocacy manager at the World Uyghur Congress. And it's an umbrella organization based out of Munich. She is currently in Munich right now, Munich, Germany. They are struggling to, present the human rights violations that are happening in this particular region, unleashed by the Chinese Communist Party. And so she is a person who was born there. She was born in Xinjiang. And then when she was very young, she migrated to Canada. She's a Canadian Uyghur right now. She did her bachelor's in law. And when she went back to Xinjiang for her holidays, she saw the 2009 uprising. And that's when she decided to be part of the struggle. And she being a diaspora person, she holds a Canadian passport. So she is free enough to talk. Having said that, China is still putting a lot of pressure and a lot of challenges to even the people in the diaspora as well. I hope she's going to touch upon it. We should never forget the fact that legally we can have many territories around, but culturally we have connections to all these places. That is how your concept of Akhanda Bharat has to be established. So we have a duty to help them achieve their goal of getting away from the atrocities of China, and then somehow their the human tragedy that is happening there needs to be brought out to every Indian. This genocide has been ignored by everybody because China either bought them off or they bullied them. Friends, let's hear it from Zumretay, and then we'll take the questions after she is done with her talk. Zumretay, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Giridhar. Thank you for having me here, and hello to everyone listening. Thank you for taking your time to listen to this very urgent issue, which is the question or the issue of Uyghurs. So I'm just going to briefly touch on the history of East Turkestan in the more recent years, I would say. So there was the independent Uyghur kingdom in East Turkestan that was established by the Sayyid kingdom, also known as the Erkin kingdom, back in the 18th century. And that was invaded by the Manchu rulers of China in 1759, who then annexed East Turkestan into their empire. So the Manchu Empire ruled East Turkestan as a military colony from 1759 to 1862. And during this period, Uyghurs, they relentlessly revolted many times, I think 42 times against this empire, and they finally expelled them in 1864, and the Uyghurs established the Yettişehir state. And then in 1876, the Manchus invaded East Turkestan again. And after 80 years of bloodshed and war, the Manchu Empire formally annexed East Turkestan into its territories and renamed it Xinjiang on November 18, 1884, Xinjiang meaning new territory, which is one of the reasons why Uyghurs don't use this name or, you know, refer to the East Turkestan as Xinjiang, because it is part of the history of colonization. So this is one of the reasons. And in 1911, East Turkestan fell under the rule of Chinese warlords. And then the Uyghurs set up two independent states afterwards. The East Turkestan Republic, the first one, which was established in 1933 and very short-lived, and it was ended in 1934, just a year later. And then it was again established, the second East Turkestan Republic that was established in 1944 until 1949. And both of these independent states were short-lived. And in October 1949, the People's Liberation Army troops of China, of the Republic of China, marched into East Turkestan and ended the East Turkestan Republic. So in 1955, the East Turkestan officially became the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Although it is, on paper, it is considered as autonomous region, when you look at the facts on the ground, nothing seems to be autonomous for this region, because Uyghurs don't decide about their own fate or their own region. There is an immense control from the Chinese states, from the colonizers, and since the annexation, or since 1949, when the People's Republic of China basically turned the East Turkestan region to an autonomous region next to their territory. It was, since then, one of the darkest period in the history of Uyghurs. And obviously, over the decades, there was an escalation of atrocities. Under the Cultural Revolution, the Uyghurs also suffered a lot, but there were many turning points in the history of Uyghurs that kind of led to today's situation, which now Uyghurs are facing an amounting genocide. So like I said, the current crackdown on Uyghurs did not happen overnight. It was a really slow work in progress that happened over decades, and result of repressive policies that were introduced little by little over time, such as the forced migration of Han Chinese into East Turkestan, beginning in the 80s. And then there were policies like the introduction of bilingual schools that were also introduced in the 90s, that's kind of laid the ground for the elimination of Uyghur language as a teaching medium in East Turkestan, in the schools, in high schools, as well as elementary schools. And as a result of all of these policies that were implemented in today, East Turkestan, or how the Chinese call it, Xinjiang region, is one of the most heavily surveilled places on Earth. And the impact of this mass surveillance also and control on the population is deeply troubling, and it is leading to a systematic persecution of an entire ethnic group on the basis of their cultural identity and also their religion. So, like I think our host mentioned it, I was present during the Urumqi Uprising that happened in 2009. I was there a couple of days later, after the initial start, which was July 5th, which is commemorated the 11th anniversary of that massacre, which was basically in response of, decades of systemic discrimination against the Uyghur people, and the lack of access to the greater opportunities for Uyghurs, but also just day-to-day discrimination in their own country, in their own land. And it was then brutally, there was a brutal crackdown on the peaceful protesters from the Chinese government in 2009. And I was able also to really witness this discrimination, the layers of discrimination that was really rooted in our society there. And that kind of led, after 2009, to kind of led Chinese government to have or exercise an even tighter control over the region. And they've introduced several legislation, which now kind of, they've used these laws, these legislation to justify their repressive measures. So, like I said, Uyghurs have suffered from state-sponsored discrimination for decades in terms of, restrictions on religious freedom, language rights, cultural rights, and freedom of movement. And especially since 2017, we've seen the emergence of political indoctrination or internment camps, holding now an estimated 1.8 to maybe 3 million of Uyghurs and other Turkic ethnic groups in these camps that are widespread across the region by thousands. And the camp inmates are detained indefinitely and without charge and forced to undergo political indoctrination classes aimed at eroding their unique religious and cultural and ethnic identities. And we've also received, or we've had recent series of official document leaks evidence this mass internment of Uyghurs. There is the China cables, the Karakash list, and especially the former one, the Karakash list, provided a better picture of the reasoning behind the mass internment. These reasons include religious extremist thought infection, or someone who wore a veil, or a wife who wore a veil, or a man who grew a beard, or going to the Islamic pilgrimage, going to Hajj, Mecca, taking part of unofficial religious practices, having a household with a dense religious atmosphere, having too many children. Those are all the reasons that are laid out in these leaks for that are sufficient for someone to be interned in a camp. As you can see and as you can tell, these are extremely arbitrary reasons, and these are the detainment of these people are extrajudicial detainment. And also from these leaks, we've also seen that the Chinese government's narrative on the religion or on the practice of Islam, and its attempt to eliminate any religious practices through re-education campaigns. And they're also, the language adopted in these leaks, these documents are highly problematic, because I quote, Xi Jinping himself said that Islam is a virus, should be considered as a virus to eliminate, and that we should have no mercy. So these are, again, quotes from high-level officials from the Chinese government, and this kind of shows or portrays the government's take on the Uyghur way of life, which includes the practice of Islam religion. And like I said, we've witnessed the introduction and implementation of draconian laws that directly target Uyghurs and their way of life, ostensibly in the name of security and protection against terrorist threats. China's counter-terror law came into effect on January 1st, 2016, and already led to unparalleled abuse. And the drafting of this law was hugely and widely condemned by the international community for its excessively broad and vague language. And it was also especially particularly condemned from UN experts. When it comes to different, I can kind of go a little bit, cover on little like different discriminations that exist, like especially civil and political rights. So Uyghurs, they don't have access to legal representation, a fair or prompt trial or due process. Legal aid is denied in cases involving leaking state secrets or endangering state security, and increasingly denied in all cases involving Uyghurs. And the problem is that these charges, leaking state secrets or endangering state security, are widely used by the Chinese government on any kind of for anything. So China will often use these, often sentence Uyghurs on these vague charges and then deny access to legal representation. And also the fact that they send millions of people in arbitrary detention and internment camps also proves that point. When it comes to economic rights, the rapidly developing industries, including the energy sector, construction, resource extraction, and government positions are mostly dominated by Han Chinese living in the region. And also that kind of falls in the demographic change that was also introduced, like I said earlier, by the forced migration of Hans. And Uyghurs are largely excluded from the benefits and employment opportunities on account of ethnicity and language. The Chinese government's attempts to change the demographics with the Han migration policies post 1949 is also an attempt to sinicize the region, and this has had huge impacts on the political and social environment. And most recently, the China's Belt and Road Initiative may actually exacerbate economic problems for Uyghurs and other ethnic groups like Tibetans, because these two regions are key components of the Belt and Road Initiative. And this might lead for both groups greater inequalities, like many previous development campaigns in the regions. And Uyghur businesses are actively discriminated against, especially during Ramadan. And between 2017 to 2019, reports estimated that at least 80,000 Uyghurs were transferred out of the Uyghur region and assigned to factories through labor transfer programs under a central government policy known as Xinjiang Aid, which basically resembles to forced labor. That was used by the Chinese government, that was encouraged by the Chinese government. And also we've seen that when China says or implies that people have been released from these concentration or internment camps, we also find reports that some of the people who were released were actually also transferred to these factories across, China. So it was outside of East Turkestan, so they were sent into other regions, so southern parts or other parts of China where they work in these facilities. And why do we say that these facilities are forced labor facilities? It's because of the conditions in which they work, just like the physical environment in which they work, because these facilities are surrounded by barbed wires, watchtowers, and the people working inside, the Uyghurs working inside, are very limited in terms of freedom of movement. So they're not allowed to go back to their families, visit their families. They're supposed to stay, and they work long hours, and after their shifts, they have to go under political re-education as well, learning Chinese after their working hours. And then I guess when it comes to education, like I've mentioned, the bilingual education programs, this was introduced in 1990 and has nearly eliminated the use of Uyghur as a medium of teaching in the region. And Hotan Prefecture was passed a ban on the use of the Uyghur language at all educational levels in 2018. And then UN experts even issued a communication on this matter, urging China to reinstate the use of Uyghur language in education. And discriminatory education policies targeting Uyghurs are widespread. The curriculum for Uyghurs has de-emphasized or eliminated teaching Uyghur language, culture, and religion. When it comes to cultural participation, the destruction and demolition by Chinese authorities of places of cultural, historical, and religious significance to Uyghur people, such as mosques, shrines, even cemeteries, were all destroyed. And if you look at the old town of Kashgar, 85% of the old town of Kashgar, which is a 2,000-year-old city, was practically reduced or destroyed. And another, I guess, problem that lays within the cultural area is that Uyghurs are often essentialized or portrayed to the international community through stereotypes, leading to patronizing and discriminatory characterizations. So we will be often portrayed by the Chinese government as an exotic novelty through dancing and music, or as extremists and terrorists. So there's this very polarizing kind of description or portrait of Uyghurs by the Chinese government, which is hugely problematic. When it comes, I guess, the more like public health and medical care, even researchers have noted a significant increase in the rate of, cancer and related afflictions in Uyghurs as a result of nuclear tests conducted being in the Lopnor region from 1964 until 1996, and this has led to many health problems for Uyghurs. And the health and treatment of Uyghur political prisoners is also another major concern, because numerous deaths in custody, especially of the elderly in re-education camps, have been reported. And the president of the World Uyghur Congress himself lost his mother in a camp last year. And he also lost his father this year under mysterious circumstances. And these cases are very common in the Uyghur diaspora. And also the Uyghur political prisoners, have, there's a concern that there's organ harvesting on these political prisoners, because there was evidence that the organ harvesting was widely used on Falun Gong practitioners. So that's another area of concern. And then when it comes to movement, freedom of movement, Uyghurs are ethnically profiled at checkpoints and routinely stopped at for inspections. So this also is connected and linked to the mass surveillance state in East Turkestan. They also the authorities collect biometrics data, including DNA samples, fingerprints, iris scans, blood types of all residents in the region, between, I think, 12 and 65, which also then is entered into centralized searchable databases and coupled with data on individuals collected from police on the ground in order to develop detailed individual profiles. And in 2017, all Uyghurs living in China were ordered to hand in their passports to police. I know my own family had to hand in their passports, which then made it impossible for them to travel abroad or to meet us in other places, because we can't go back anymore. And Uyghurs have seen their movements scrutinized, and like I said, the checkpoints, the numerous checkpoints in the streets, but also house surveillance. So there was this campaign, the Homestays Campaign, where Chinese officials were sent into Uyghur homes for surveillance purposes, where they would stay with this Uyghur family as like an extended family member and survey all their all the things they were doing inside their own private homes. And we've seen reports that sometimes they would ask the children to respond questions such as, do your parents pray? Just to have an idea of, you know, the actions or what was happening inside the homes, and have a even bigger control over these, over the population. So, and then I guess like the recent years, there was an escalation of human rights abuses in terms when we look at the internment camps, but also recently with the issue of forced labor, which is a very worrying one, because there's also the fact that major global brands are also, they may be involved directly or indirectly with their supply chains in Uyghur forced labor. So there's been a lot of, you know, movement in that area where Uyghur NGOs were pushing for global brands to take responsibility and make sure that they're conducting ethical businesses and not profiting from Uyghur forced labor inside East Turkestan. And then also recently, the recent reports of forced sterilization on Uyghur women and forced abortions in an attempt to control the population, to really have a tight grip on the population, on the Uyghur population by the Chinese government. And so we have a mounting evidence of China committing genocide against the Uyghur people. So in terms of, you know, the human rights violations, I've kind of, I think, laid out everything that the Chinese government is currently committing against the Uyghurs and other Turkic ethnic groups. So I mean, I'm gonna stop here, but I'm happy to answer any questions that we have.
Thanks, Zumretay. You know, I think what you said, if people actually look at that in a serious manner, they will understand the gravity of the situation. Actually, it is pretty significant. I'm not too sure how many of you registered some of the points that she said. She spoke about this practice of Han Chinese coming and staying in the houses of Uyghur families. So they come and stay in the Uyghur families as if they're guests.
Yeah.
You know, when we go to, in olden days in India, when we travel to pilgrim centers, we didn't have hotels then. So we used to stay in other people's houses. Because culture was all same, we didn't have a problem. But here, Han Chinese have nothing to do with Uyghurs. But they're saying we are one family or some nonsense they tell them, and they go stay in their house only to spy on that family. I think
the problem here, yeah, the problem here is we don't have any, like Uyghur people won't have any problem accommodating Chinese people in their houses, welcoming them, because Uyghur people were known to be very hospitable people and generous people and welcoming. But the problem here is that the Uyghurs, they don't have a choice. This is imposed on them. They're forced to welcome these people they don't know. These are strangers that are being imposed into their homes, and they're surveying, they're watching every movement they're doing. So this where the problem lies, and having a choice in accepting anyone in your house must, I mean, this has to be, you know, let people have the choice to decide that. But the Chinese government says otherwise.
Yeah. So what these families, Han Chinese families do is like what she said, they keep asking the children, what do your parents do? Children are innocent. They say, yeah, we pray, you know, we do namaz. All these things get recorded and they inform their masters in Beijing or I don't know, wherever. So that family gets persecuted. So it is like, you are not free outside. You can't go to the mosque. You can't do what you want. You're not free within your own house.
Exactly.
You are absolutely a captive. This is what, actually this is worse than what Nazi Hitler did. Nazi Hitler was brutal and, you know, whatever it is, at least in your house, they were free to do what they want. Only when they went out, they had a problem. But here, you're not safe in your own house. And I think you just briefly touched base on technology they are using. They are using artificial intelligence. With the database, they are able to track each and every individual who is walking on the streets. And if he's walking faster, they'll go arrest him. If they've parked the vehicle wrong, they think that this fellow is planning some terrorist attack. So any movement of any single individual which is not in a normal way, they are tracked so meticulously that they are arrested. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, like the checkpoints, they're using, China is using technology to kind of really repress on ethnic groups on their own in China, across China, and especially Uyghurs, where they're targeted using artificial intelligence. Even you know, they're developing like technology that is able to detect Uyghur attributes and traits, and when they're using artificial intelligence or technology. And they're actually, there was numerous reports that they were doing, they were kind of getting help from Western companies or Western institutes. And that was one big story. I mean, they're using technology from abroad to then use it on their inside China and then against some groups. And there was, I mean, like there were like there was this one big MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, that was very much linked to providing these really high technologies to the government of China directly. So there are many of them that were kind of involved in that. So there's also this kind of worry or concern about ethical technology and like all the artificial intelligence ethics about this, because yes, we're using technology, which is great, but if technology is then used for repression and crackdown, then we're living in a dystopian society, and we're contributing to a totalitarian regime and facilitating their repressive policies on a certain ethnic groups.
Yeah. And this exactly the same replica is happening in Tibet as well.
Exactly.
So hopefully we'll get Tibetan activists sometime in the future to speak about it. But Zumretay, could you talk in terms of what is exactly, I mean, you briefly spoke about it, the atrocities on women. You know, you said, you know, they're forcefully being aborted, and I believe in the concentration camps, they're being given some medicines so that, you know, they don't conceive. I don't know. Maybe you could speak a little bit on that.
Yeah. So I mean, in the concentration camps, we have so former detainees who managed to leave because they had another passport. So most of them had Kazakh passports, so they managed to be released or leave, and they have testified publicly, you know, about their horrible experience in these camps. And all of them have testified that while they were in these camps detained, they were forced injections. They had forced injections of some nature, which they don't know about because they don't provide any information. They just swallow pills and take injections without any information. And they've all realized that after a couple of, you know, weeks or months, they're stopped having their periods. All of them have testified in that regard. And this corroborates previous reporting and also the new reporting of forced sterilization and abortion. So there's this huge worry or like legitimate concern that, you know, China is really trying to control the population among the Uyghurs and really just assimilate us and eradicate the Uyghur population.
And also there are stories about the girls having to, without a choice, having to marry Han Chinese.
Yeah, there are also reports of forced marriages between Han Chinese male and Uyghur women. So, I mean, we don't have any like reports from any like scholar or intellectual, but the sources are from, you know, like journalistic sources, or mostly also coming from social media. So from like Chinese social media, these like photos or even governmental campaigns or posters, flyers encouraging the marriage, inter-ethnic marriages. And this is one thing to know, is that some like Uyghurs, they don't usually marry Han Chinese people because of the really huge difference of cultures and even just like religion and values. They don't like marry Hans usually. It does happen, but it's very like isolated, I guess. But so there's been this like these campaigns to kind of forcibly marry Uyghur women to to Han Chinese, and it was mostly from like coming from social media like WeChat. These photos of Uyghur women crying because they were forced to marry these men, or like posters or even videos that were made to promote the inter-ethnic marriages between Uyghur women and Han Chinese men.
Yeah. Friends, you can use the hand button to raise so that I can unmute your this thing, and then I can ask you to raise a question. But in the meanwhile, I'll just ask her a couple of more questions and then we can take it from there. Zumretay, see, there was this move by the US government recently to, I think, specifically target people who are doing this ethnic atrocities on Uyghurs or Tibetans, yep. Especially Uyghurs. How do you see that? I mean, is it helping? Do you need something more to be done? What's your view on that particular, legislation that was brought by USA?
So the recent sanctions from last week were, I think it was a great step towards accountability, because the Uyghurs, we've been crying and we've been suffering for so many years, and we've been advocating for concrete actions to be taken towards the Chinese government, because for years China has been carrying out these repressive policies against the Uyghurs without any consequences from the international community. So the fact that the US has stepped up and said, look, we're gonna let China know that there will be consequences if they keep pushing and repressing on the Uyghurs, because we're in the 21st century. We've said after the Second World War, we've said after the Holocaust, never again. And now a never again is occurring again. So we can't keep up like this. We have to let China know that there will be severe and consequences on their actions, and they will be held accountable. So I think for this, the sanctions were a huge step towards accountability, because these people are directly contributing to the repression against the Uyghurs, again, like for the genocide of Uyghurs. So the Uyghur community have welcomed this decision, of course, and we expect more from other countries as well, because this is not just a US issue. This is, at the end of the day, it's a human rights issue, and the whole world should be involved in punishing or holding China accountable for its crimes.
Well, what is the road ahead? What are you looking for? What are your demands as a Uyghur Council, who are fighting for these causes? I know you want the human rights to be restored, and that's a given. Obviously, you are fighting for it. But what exactly are your long-term goals in terms of? Do you want to continue to be part of China? Do you want independence? Or do you want some kind of just changes in the Chinese law to help you have some autonomy? What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? What are your long-term goals?
Of course, this is a kind of a I guess, hard question, because in the Uyghur diaspora, there are different, I guess, like positions and ideologies. Some people want independence, some people want something else. But I think for now, like, we are in such a dear situation, a bad situation. I mean, we're literally facing genocide. So for us to, right now, it's really to focus on the human rights. And I mean, at our organization, we promote and we respect and promote self-determination, which I think it's even recognized in the UN Charter, self-determination as a basic right for every people. So this is where we stand. Our mission statement is that. But then, you know, right now, I think the Uyghurs in the diaspora were also focused and like submerged in the human rights advocacy right now, because what do you do when you're being extinguished or facing genocide and there are so many atrocities being committed against your own people? You can't think of anything else right now other than the current situation.
So what is your personal choice when for a minute, hypothetically, let's assume China accepts your demand for self-determination. What is your choice? What is you as Zumrati, what's your personal choice?
I will probably like left that in the open. I'm not gonna answer that question right now.
Okay, fine, that's okay. Then let's see. We'll start taking questions somehow. Yeah, Deepa, go ahead, please ask.
Thank you. Hi, how much has the Chinese altered your traditional agriculture and your traditional food habits? Thank you.
That's an interesting question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question, but it's a great question. I think China, they're very much carrying out like an assimilation policies, and there's this huge effort in sinicization and really eliminating all of the Uyghur like aspects of the Uyghur culture, and food is being one, I guess. So I'm not sure like what's really happening on the ground, but I know that, in recent years, especially in regards to Ramadan, people are forced to break, like to not fast. They're forbidden to fast. So people do it in secret, like in their homes, or even, during Ramadan, Uyghur restaurants are forced to stay open, which is something that we don't do. During Ramadan, restaurants open at night, as we know, in many Muslim majority countries. But in the recent years, restaurants, they've stayed open and they're forced to stay open. And many journalists went on the ground and reported that. And so people are also reported to, being forced to eat pork, to, incorporate pork in their diet, which again is not something we do. We're Muslims, we don't eat pork. And then during Ramadan, people are also forced to drink, smoke, and there are like these, I guess, organized contests for people to do that. And again, we don't do that. These are not some things or habits that Uyghurs do. So I guess in that regard, there's this really, total assimilation policies that are even touching these, the diets of Uyghurs, or like the food aspect of Uyghurs. Yeah.
Yeah, when the cultural aspects are being significantly, attacked, and culture is being erased, food is part of the culture, right? Yeah. So I think what Deepa is probably trying to come at is the Chinese food habits are very irresponsible, as we know. They ate some bats and all. Now the whole world is sitting home. this Chinese coronavirus, they say it has come from some bats and all. They ate some bats, I don't know, whatever. Are they pumping in this irresponsible food habits onto Uyghurs? That is the issue. Then you would become one like Han Chinese, right? And you would also start doing similar things like what they do, eat everything that moves on earth, and then you create problems to yourself and the world.
I mean, the thing is like, you know, anyone is free to eat whatever they want, but the problem again here is that the Uyghur people are being forced to do these things. And when you're forced, well, then you lose your freedom, and that's a violation of individual rights and basic fundamental rights, because choosing what to eat, choosing what to wear, it's intrinsically linked to your own choices. So the Chinese government imposing these choices on the Uyghur people, that's the problem. And also the problem is like assimilating and just, you know, having this one culture, one way of life, which is the Chinese way of life, on other groups that are completely different and have different values, different cultures and different habits or aspects of living. So that's where the problem is. And I think this is how we should view it. But I mean, whatever you know, we don't have anything against what the Chinese people or other people eat, the way they live. We just want them to let us live our own way of life.
Yeah, but the point is probably they're using artificial intelligence or other technologies to, maybe not in a very crude way, but in a very subtle way. They're trying to promote their food, which is probably better than your food. I mean, second, third generation will start using, you know, they'll start using their food rather than your traditional food. So that's the idea. Okay. Okay, fine. Now let's see. Gopalji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, I would like to one question regarding there was many atrocities done in China. They have been killing a lot of people, but there is no evidence. Do your organization maintain any evidence to provide to UN to tell that the genocide of Chinese governments done on the people over there?
So yeah, one of the main challenges that we face is obviously we're not able to go on the ground, Uyghurs in the diaspora. So, well, especially, well, since 2016, 17, I would say it became more problematic, and now we don't really have access. And then the access to information has been widely reduced. And the only ways, there are certain foreign journalists who will be able to go, and this is how we've been getting evidence. Or like for the camps, for example, it was one of the primary sources was satellite imagery. Over a couple of months, over years, we've seen like the building of the camps. And obviously, like I said, foreign journalists remain a very critical resource, but then also academics who don't have access to the ground necessarily, they will use Chinese official documents or governmental documents to base their research on. And that's how we've been getting evidence most of the time. And we have, I mean, provided many like briefings or materials to the UN. They do have, and they've issued many communications. I think the UN has kind of issued a lot of materials on that, but based on the materials that we've submitted or that there's available. But right now it's mostly about having, like, sending an independent mission on the ground in East Turkestan to really assess the situation. And this lies within the Human Rights Council. And well, this is another area that we advocate in. So yeah.
During the COVID, we have seen that many people, they have killed instead of treating the patients. Some videos came in the China's media. After some time, they all vanished again. So these type of killings is captured by some of people kept separately, or because if you keep it in your phone, by the technology which they are having, they can delete the media from your phone also. So you're not able to store the media in your phone itself. They can delete anything from your phone.
Yeah, like I said, everything is like hugely monitored. So I mean, we've seen, I guess, with the virus, kind of shown the international community how China really, deals with these sensitive issues, and especially its treatment of whistleblowers at the beginning, at the first stages of coronavirus, like of the pandemic, has shown how China responds to these crises. So just being a dissident, having a dissident voice will be a problem for the Chinese government, and you will be severely punished. And so getting that information out is practically impossible, but some people will risk their lives to do so when they post online. And then we will have these online videos. We've documented, I mean, when I say we, I mean the Uyghur organizations have documented these videos, and there were many videos that emerged in March where Uyghurs were facing food shortages because of the lockdown, and no additional help was provided by the government. So
and they killed some journalists also. I heard that they killed journalists and prisoners from the different places. They took it place in the name of the COVID. They killed the people. I heard the news. Mm-hmm. Is it right? Something happening there?
That might be true. I don't know. I'm not informed on that specific issue, but yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gopalji. Next is Neelakantamji.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Erkin, congratulations, and it's a great job what you are doing. And
Sir, can you keep the mic closer to you? We are unable to hear you.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, better.
So, Mr. Erkin, my question to you is, you are seeking support from United Nations.
Sir, no, we can't hear you. I think you need to come closer.
Hello.
Or hold it this way and then talk. Or come very close to the mic and talk. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, better.
Yeah, okay. Now you are seeking support from United Nations for justice to protect Uyghurs. But they are not allowed to support UN functioning in terms of protecting human rights past during many instances. So how much you rely on United Nations for justice in this regard?
Yeah, you kind of cut off many times, but I think I will try to answer from what I understood. I mean, we seek, support from the UN. I think UN is one of the most important international human rights bodies in our communities, in the international community. And what we want ultimately would be to send an independent mission to East Turkestan and really assess, because we can't do much unless we have credible firsthand information from these, because that's how there's a blockage, because sometimes the information we submit will not be taken into consideration because of the difficulty to access to information in China in general, but especially in these remote regions. And so we are, we want the UN to really send independent missions to the ground, and also for the High Commissioner herself to go see what's happening, but not to have a politicized visit, but to have an independent kind of unfettered access to the region and evaluate what's really happening on the ground, and then take action.
Yeah, but if I may just add to what you said, the problem is China has grip of almost all the wings of UN today.
Yeah.
Be it WHO, be it UNESCO or UN Human Rights Commission, you name it. China has complete grip over it, either directly or through its countries which are completely indebted to it, especially the African bloc. Almost all African countries en masse vote for China. Even in the issue of Hong Kong, all of them, 54 countries voted in favor of China. That means human rights be damned, it doesn't matter, but they voted for China, even with regard to Hong Kong. So China, what it does is it will use UN platforms to effectively stall anything that is thrown at them. So worst case scenario, even if it goes to the Security Council, they have a veto power. So, and even in General Assembly also, they have thrown money with to a lot of people, and a lot of countries would buy their line of thinking. So I'm not too sure whether you can expect anything great from UN in that sense. I don't know. I'm not too sure of it. One second, Neelakantamji, I'll unmute you. Yeah.
The job of United Nations is to unite the world, but the situation is, because they are influenced by China, and they're not doing their job properly. They're not doing justice where the people required. I don't know if we can trust the United Nations in the future. That is my doubt.
Yes, we cannot trust them. You're right. We cannot trust UN. Yeah, but you're still trying, right, Zumretay?
Yeah, I think if we keep pushing, I guess like these, I mean, this is one of the most sensitive issues in the world today, and it's not easy, but I mean, I am not someone who advocates for defeatist attitudes. I don't have this kind of, I'm a very optimistic person, and I am a very perseverant person. Even if it's difficult, I think it's important to push. And I think gathering more support from other countries, especially from Muslim majority countries, might be one step towards, you know, like holding China accountable. And that's, I mean, for now, it's a shame that, you know, all these Muslim countries are not supporting the Uyghur issue. But I think we might someday have the support, or, I mean, find some other way to do this. But yeah.
Yeah, I think most of their loyalties have been bought by China. I mean, even the champions of Islam, be it Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, or Iran, they're all quiet. Nobody's talking. Yeah. I think he's just opened the checkbook for $300 billion on Iran now. So Iran is going to keep quiet.
Exactly.
And Pakistani Prime Minister said, I don't know what's happening in Xinjiang. So
which is impossible because we share borders, but yes.
Yeah, and I think that you have marriages across the border also, right? Yeah, so friends, one small piece of information I would give you. There is a place in Srinagar called Tibetan Colony. So this Tibetan Colony is actually Uyghurs from Xinjiang were brought in and settled there by Sheikh Abdullah at the time of partition because he wanted to reduce the ethnic Hindu population and do a demographic change. So this was something which attracted the Nizam of Hyderabad, and Nizam of Hyderabad wrote to Sheikh Abdullah to send a few thousands of Uyghurs to Hyderabad so that he could do the change in Hyderabad as well. Unfortunately for him, the police action happened and he was kicked out. And so it didn't happen. But then this is, I mean, to divert the attention of people, this was called Tibetan Colony. This is very close to the Eidgah in Srinagar. And this is, I mean, the colony has come around a place which is called Vicharnag or Vacharnag, one of the oldest temples in Kashmir, now completely abandoned. The entire area is taken over by these people just to make ethnic changes in Srinagar. So that is the connection that we have in Srinagar of the recent past. Okay. Now, Abhinandan Reddy, go ahead, sir.
Hi. Madam Zumretay, my question is, has the one child policy, has it changed the sex ratio in the region? Are there more men or are there more women? What has happened? First question. Second thing is, then again, I think you did touch upon the Muslim nation bloc. How can you get them on? What are you trying? What are the Uyghurs trying to? How are they trying to get this the Muslim nation bloc come and support them? At least a few nations, if not.
So if I understood your first question right, you're talking about the one-child policy, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Actually, the one-child policy was mostly implemented in the other China, well, like in China, and so not in East Turkestan, or for ethnic minorities that China calls. It was they were allowed to have 2 children. So this was like an exception that was provided. But I am aware that if you have more than 2 children, then you're obviously forced to go under abortion. And a lot of people, especially in the rural regions or areas, Uyghurs would have more children, and they would just clandestine child and have these illegal, I guess, child, and then just they would have someone else from the family take care of them and adopt them in a way. But I think there's the gender, I'm not sure, like I think, I'm not an expert in this issue, but I think there are more women than men.
Okay.
Yeah, but and then in regards of the second question, there's that's a huge problem actually for the Uyghur community, that the Muslim majority worlds, they don't support us. We are currently trying all of the avenues, everything that's open. We're trying to get meetings with these countries or any important people from these countries. Currently, it's being met with no success. There's no response from them at all. We're literally being ignored by these countries. We are trying also, to get meetings with the OIC. No success there either. So for us, I think right now, it's mostly but like reaching out to community members and mostly like faith-based organizations. So we have, my colleague is very much advocating with or collaborating with very known imams or religious groups who are based in the UK, because they might have some extended power or influence over these countries. So this is our strategy right now. I don't know how, we're still trying to figure out what is the best way to approach these countries. But right now the door is being closed on us from these countries. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Vikas ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I have 2 questions, but my second question is almost answered in the previous few questions. So my question is, apart from the United Nations and OIC, how do you think the other democratic powers of the world can help the Uyghurs in China? And my second question was regarding the Islamic countries. So why do you think they are not really coming up to help you? Have they simply given up on their values and their belief systems? Or have they compromised themselves so much to China?
So the first question, well, I think that right now it's the responsibility of the international community to come together as one and really have a joint kind of position on China, on their on the atrocities they're committing, because at the end of the day, this is a threat to everyone. This is a threat to our democracies across the world, because especially in regards of technology and like the surveillance, these methods are being exported abroad. So today might be happening in East Turkestan, and we said a couple of years ago what happens what is happening to East Turkestan might be happening to Hong Kong tomorrow, and this is exactly where we are today. So we believe that it won't stop with Hong Kong. It will go beyond that, and especially now with the very sensitive, kind of trade war, or like the war that's happening between the US and China, and we've seen Chinese expansionist, ideologies and how it's affecting the world. So it's important for like the world, and especially like the Western world, or like the democracies, to come together and to in the name of freedom and democracy and these like democratic values, to hold China responsible for their crimes, to not let that just happen and like turn a blind eye on that, but hold China accountable for their crimes, and being united, not being scared of what China might say or think, because do we want to be on the wrong side of history, where we just let another genocide slip by and then not do anything about it or condemn it? This is what we expect. I mean, sanctions introduced, that would be another like a major step, I guess. Legislation such as like Magnitsky laws, introducing these countries a better protection for the Uyghur refugees because that's another issue that, because Uyghurs now have become stateless since China refused to renew passports for these Uyghurs who escaped East Turkestan, and they found themselves stateless in other countries. So better protection for these refugees, and for these countries to not deport them back, or extradition to China. So that's another issue. But yeah, and then in terms of like OIC, I guess it's mostly because of the money, because a lot of these countries are in debt to China, especially the African countries are, Chinese presence in Africa is another like big problem, because these countries hugely depend and rely on China and their economic power and influence. That's a way to buy their silence. And also another thing is that most of these countries that support China, they have their own internal problems. So by supporting China, they're also having, the world to turn a blind eye on what's happening in their own countries, because these are also very abusive regimes, dictatorships that are supporting another kind of dictatorship. So I guess this is my way to answer your question.
Yeah, but in an ideal world, democracy should have stood up for democratic and human values. I agree. But the point is, it is these big, massive democracies and progressive democracies who supported dictators. Who is supporting the dictatorship in Saudi Arabia? Who supported the dictatorship of Gaddafi? Who supported the dictatorship of Saddam Hussein for so many years? I mean, you name it. I mean, the CCP was supported by US as a counterweight to Soviet Union for many decades. Today, suddenly they've woken up because they figured out that they made a blunder in last 4 or 5 decades. So the so-called democracies, it's the European democracy, it is Australia, Canada, USA, they have to take a blame for having supported all these dictators all this while. And they claim to be democracies, but they have not supported democracy. For instance, they never supported India when we had problems with Pakistan or whatever it is. When it comes to democracy suffering, they never came to our rescue. So it is just a business interest. Wherever they have their interest, they go do what they want. So China is replicating it. So now these people have no excuse to talk about it. So we have a serious problem. I agree with you that, their genocide is something which the world is ignoring it. World is simply watching the genocide happen, and they're struggling. They're finding it difficult. If this goes on for 2-3 decades, probably they're over. I mean the whole culture, civilization will be wiped out, and democracies have to blame, and including Indian democracy. We are also pretty quiet. We never open a mouth against them. We don't want to antagonize China. We have a problem. All democracies are at fault. Forget about dictatorships. Sumir Bhasinji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I wanted to ask the lady that how was the connection between the religious leadership of the Uyghurs and the ulemas in the region, including India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan?
What's the, could you repeat the question? What's the relationship of religious figures?
Between the religious leadership in Xinjiang and the ulemas in India and in the region in India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan.
The relationship.
The religious leadership of Xinjiang, is it in touch with the religious leaders of the local region?
Honestly, like I said, there's a huge, immense control over religious activities in the Uyghur region, and the CCP has to like agree on they're picking the imams. So I don't think they do have any touch. I wouldn't be aware because it's all so much controlled that, yeah, I mean, like I said, the access to information is really impossible, and that's, I don't think they would be in touch, no.
Yeah, Sumirji, if I may add to what she said one word, you know, all the imams are appointed by China.
It's like the with Tibet, you know, how all the lamas are also appointed by China.
A communist party which doesn't believe in religion wants to control the religion. You know, that's how China is. So be it Tibet or be it Xinjiang, be it the Buddhist monks or lamas, or it is the the Maulvis of the masjids of Xinjiang, China appoints it, and they are taught Islam in Chinese madrasas. They are not allowed to learn elsewhere. These people don't know Arabic. They don't know Islam literally. What has been taught to them, they have taught. In fact, I don't know whether Zumretay, you are aware of this or not. I think China has set up a program of rewriting Quran.
Yeah, there were some news that were reported on Chinese media that they were trying to rewrite the Quran in accordance to the CCP values. So it kind of, again, like, if you look at the bigger picture of assimilation, that's another way of doing it, and cynicization of the Islam religion. And
Correct. So essentially, the question of them interacting doesn't happen. But I think there was some connection between the Pakistani Maulvis and some Maulvis in Xinjiang. That is how some degree of terrorism or support happened there. Some bombs were exported, which is what China claims that it is terrorism and all. So I think some support went from Pakistan in terms of some bomb blasts that happened in some areas of Xinjiang. So it's not that it's not happening, but then what you said, in the last 2 years, it has been very aggressively controlled. Prior to that, there was some interaction. Okay, Nageshji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah, I have a few questions. Okay, and let me write it out. I have jotted down these things. Okay, are Uyghurs in touch with their kins in J&K and Ladakh? That is number one question. Okay, second question is, so what is your position on Aksai Chin? Uyghurs' position? Is there any position on Aksai Chin? And third question, what is happening about this Gilgit-Baltistani people whose spouses are jailed in Xinjiang? Oh, hope you know that one. Few years back, there were a lot of reports that they were denying visas to Pakistani businessmen who regularly, frequently visit Kashgar and all this thing. What is their position? Are they still in jail? And is that issue resolved? These days, I am not listening all these news in Pakistani media. And finally, what is the position of Turkey, which it calls itself as a champion of Muslim causes everywhere? Okay, these are the few questions which I have jotted down and asked you. And finally, I can ask some other question. Okay, first you answer this few questions in sequence.
For the Pakistanis who were denied visas, I'm not too aware of that. I know that I mean, there are a lot of Pakistani businessmen who, who used to frequently travel to East Turkestan, and I've met some myself to go. But I wouldn't be too surprised if that was the case by China denying visas. That's I guess. But there were also like marriages between Pakistani men and Uyghur women, which I'm not sure if it's really related, so I wouldn't really be able to elaborate on that. And in terms of what was the other question?
Okay.
Aksai Chin and
Aksai Chin, do you have any position on what is your position on Aksai Chin?
I'm not.
No. Okay.
Aksai Chin is shown as part of Xinjiang now. Whereas India claims Aksai Chin as part of India.
Are you aware of that one?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about this vaguely. I don't really have a position about that.
Okay. Yeah. So what about Turkey? Is Turkey helping you out?
So Turkey's position is very ambiguous. I would say that in the recent years they did like statements, public statements that were in support of Uyghurs, because that's another thing, we're a Turkic like ethnic group, right? So we have a very like similar and connected history with Turkish people and Turkey. So, and there's a lot of the Uyghur diaspora in Turkey is very important, and so there's this very strong connection to the Turkic culture. So we do expect Turkey to be one of the leading countries on this, but unfortunately, again, because of Chinese influence, it's been very limited. And we've had, I guess, in some forums like the UN, they've supported or raised concerns about the issue, but it's very ambiguous. Sometimes they will do it, sometimes they will choose to not do it publicly, but sometimes they will do, they will like kind of, I guess, support China. But we're still trying to, figure out which way Turkey is going. But it is a very ambiguous situation, like position.
Yeah. You mentioned that after 2016, the persecution has been intensified. Is it a coincidence that Belt and Road Initiative has been started soon after that, considering this Xinjiang as a strategically important place, and they want to control you? So are you people a hurdle for them in any way?
So there's I think, direct kind of link between these two, because I mean, the Belt and Road Initiative is one of the most important projects or initiatives that the Chinese government is currently pursuing, and that's I guess like the escalation of control or the tight control over the region has a lot to do with that project, because they don't want to have to deal with a problematic area. So they're increasing more control to control the people and to reduce all their problems in this region, to have a success in carrying out their plans of Belt and Road Initiative. And I think it's the same in Tibet. They're also, with the new introduction of the new ethnic unity law, that's also that promotes ethnic unity, and it's a very vague law that was there was a similar law introduced in East Turkestan previously as well. So
okay, carry on.
So yeah, I think it's very much linked with that project.
Okay, final question. Okay, is Naqshbandi Sufism, is it still prevalent in Xinjiang?
Is it what?
Still prevalent? Naqshbandi Sufism.
It's not the thing is that I think us Uyghurs, we have a very like a rich history of, you know, we were Buddhists, and then we also practice Sufism and different forms of religion. And at the end, the Islam that we adopted is kind of a mix of a lot of these, I guess, backgrounds. But the Islam that we have is also very much, there's a lot of Sufism that is also, I guess, involved. So it's a very moderate and I would say Islam, but I don't think it's like Sufism alone is as prevalent in the region. But anyway, today, like the religion has been severely curtailed, the religious freedom. So right now there's not much.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Nageshji, what I heard is in the Sufi songs, every third sentence has to be that we are so thankful to the Chinese government. So other two sentences you can say whatever you want. So it's like, I mean, whatever, it's as good as gone. Anyway, I think for them, more than the religion now, it's all a question of survival now. I think China just wants to depopulate all this area for whatever it is. And then it's just a resource-rich country. So they just want Han Chinese to take over this place and the resources. I think it provides almost 1/3 or 1/4 of its oil and gas resources, I think. And it has got rich minerals, a lot of minerals there. And I think you are like 1% of the whole Chinese population, 1 or 2% of the entire Chinese population. I mean, huge landmass, many resources. I mean, they can easily do away with 1%. 1% is not going to hurt them. They can as well populate it with Han. They actually did it. Not the Chinese Communist Party, but the Qing dynasty. I don't know, how do you pronounce it? Qing. How do you pronounce it? Qing dynasty? Or how do you pronounce it? Qing dynasty. Yeah, Qing dynasty. Who ruled up to 1911 or 1912. Those guys north of Xinjiang, called Zungaria, that area, they completely cleansed. 80% of the population they killed, and they brought in Han Chinese. So it is in the culture of the Chinese kingdom, right from the Qing dynasty, right down up to the Communist Party now. So they can do it. They can ethnically cleanse them in no time. That's the sad part of it. Yeah, Balaji, please go ahead. Balaji, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am. I have two questions. Based on your answer on the first question, then I'll ask the second. Otherwise, it'll be inconsequential. What I want to ask you is, what is your expectation from India, my country?
That's I guess, very good question. So I guess we expect support.
What kind of support?
I mean, we expect, first of all, of Indian citizens to know about this issue, because we share a border. So it would be a shame not to be aware of what's happening on the other side. And to really, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there, especially a lot of Chinese propaganda to try to, you know, really change the opinions and minds of people. So it would be important for, I guess, Indian citizens to really know about the real issue, and also listen to the affected communities, such as myself or any other Uyghurs. I mean, I know Uyghurs are living in India, but from India, specifically the Indian government, we would like them to take a firmer stance on China, to publicly, condemn Chinese repressive policies, to publicly support the Uyghurs, to do more things, I guess, less behind closed doors, but more openly, be less scared of Chinese, I guess, influence, and to better protect the Uyghurs who are living in India, also just maybe in international forums like the, maybe in the UN or other forums.
Diplomatic
Yeah,
support.
exactly.
Okay.
Diplomatic support. That's one important
Sorry to butt, but I have my second question now. Now, it is not on the anti-humanitarian atrocities done by CCP there, but on the religious front. What if India, as an Indian citizen, I would ask, now currently China is trying to conquer the small nations around it, and trying to have a supreme power on the global front, right? In a similar scenario, Muslims as a religion also trying to throw out the caliphate, ideology across the world. Slowly and steadily, they are going to different countries. The population numbers are increasing, demographics are going to change, and slowly the Islamic State is being declared. In such a situation, why should India support another Muslim sect, which is Uyghurs there? Sorry if I'm being blunt.
I think, no,
sorry for being blunt,
sure. But that's why I'm saying there's a lot of disinformation out there.
The reason why I'm asking this, we have enough of problems within the country. Unfortunately, when we got separated from Pakistan, the Muslims never went there. So we have enough of problem here. So again, why should on humanitarian grounds, why should I support Uyghurs in China? They might even join as an Islamic, they might start problems again.
The question is, why should you not support them? Because we're humans, and just the idea that you consider Uyghurs as a sect, I think it's the wrong idea. We're a population, an ethnic group, just like yourself. And yes, I agree with you. There are these caliphates around the world, but I doubt that they will take on the world. I doubt that they will gain so much power. And this is certainly not the case with the Uyghurs. I mean, we're so repressed. We have no freedom at all even inside our homes. I don't have contact with my family. We're in 21st century, and we're supposed to have this instant connection across the world, no matter where we are. And I have no contact with my family because of what I do. Do you think this is normal? Do you think, I mean, I'm a normal person. I refuse to believe that Muslims are all should all be considered as sect. Sects exist in every single religion, whether it's Muslim, whether it's Christians, whether it's Jews. Sect is another problem that we shouldn't involve in this issue. Right now, we're talking about a human rights issue, and Uyghur people are being interned for no reason. I understand that India has their own problems. Everyone does, but that shouldn't, give you the right to ignore a genocide that's going on under your own eyes.
Yes, we have a genocide which has happened in the 1900s, where Kashmir, a lot of our brethren have been killed by the Muslims. No country came to our support.
And how did you, exactly, how did you feel back then? So it's the same thing. If no country is coming to our support, then how are we gonna survive? This is I think in this question, it's just we must be reunited. We must be united, come at a front.
What we are currently feeling is once bitten, twice shy. We've already faced the atrocities done by the Muslims on the Hindu population. So knowingly, why should we help a Muslim population is what I'm looking at. I'm not disputing on the humanitarian front. I totally agree with you.
I understand, but I think we shouldn't be seeing this as just like a Muslim group. Like, it's not just, we're human beings, I think, as well. We're not just Muslims. Our identity is beyond that too. We're not just, you can't just label us as just Muslims. We're Uyghurs, we're an ethnic group, and we have other attributes than just being Muslims. And right now, it's not just our religion that is being attacked or targeted by the CCP, but it's also our culture, our rich culture, our just human dignity. All of it is being under attack. So if you have, you have the choice to support Uyghurs or other peoples. I'm not imposing anything on you, but I think Uyghurs as a population we deserve support for what's being committed against us, and we deserve to not be living under these current situation. So yeah, I mean, it is up to you for sure, but I think it's very unfair to say that why should we support Muslims when, because with that kind of mentality, we're not going anywhere.
Okay, sorry for being blunt, but that's just the way we want to ask.
Thank you. See, Balaji, the point is like what she said. Ultimately, we have a kind of responsibility as a civilization. We have a civilizational responsibility. So we cannot allow genocide happening and just say that just because you're a Muslim, you're going to keep quiet.
Yeah.
Then that shows up that we are very weak in our civilization. In fact, the lands that were lost to India, be it Afghanistan, Pakistan, or Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Uyghurs, all these lands which are part of the Akhand Bharat, they have not known peace at all. So if at all anything, they would need the healing touch of the civilization of India. Now, Zumretay, I'll ask you a question. I know this is a hypothetical question, but you anyway did not want to answer whether, how do you want to vote in a referendum? Now, for a minute, assuming that you have a choice, I mean, Uyghurs have a choice, not you, but Uyghurs have a choice. You cannot stay independent because there are three powers surrounding you. There is China, there is Russia, and there is India. There are three powers and you're landlocked. You have to depend on one of these guys. So it makes sense for you to be legally connected with somebody and still have a degree of autonomy. Now, civilizationally, if you are not connected to somebody, then you would suffer because somebody will take over. I mean, China, even if it gives you freedom, tomorrow it can again come and take you over. Or maybe Russia will take over. We know what Russia did to so many Russian republics, right? Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, all these were part of Russia. Now they are out. So given a choice, if you have to be with either Russia, China, or India, who would you choose? I know independence doesn't seem to be a viable option. That's why I'm saying. I know ideally you would want independence, but then probably it may not be viable. One of these three countries are going to take over. So given a choice, which one do you choose?
I am gonna pass on that question because it's a hypothetical question, and I am here. I am the human rights advocate. I am not a politician or anyone like that. So I will just refuse to answer that question, if you may. Thank you.
Okay, I leave it to you. But there are countries around who have chosen otherwise. For instance, Sikkim was a kingdom. It's a Buddhist kingdom. So they had a threat. China could take over any day. So they decided to merge with India. There's another choice, Bhutan. Bhutan is also a Buddhist kingdom. So what they did is they retained their independence, but they gave foreign affairs and security to India. They will not maintain an Indian army. They have handed over their security of their country and the foreign policy to India. The rest of the internal affairs, they have kept it with themselves. Some kind of an arrangement has to be done. Otherwise, you guys don't, it's impossible for you to survive alone. Either Russia or China, they are expansionist. India is not expansionist. But those two are expansionists. They will eat you up one day or other. Just a point. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Murthy Garu, please go ahead. DSR Murthy from Guntur.
Sir, Namaste. My point is there any change in the situation of Uyghurs in East Turkestan after the leak of Karkak's list?
I can't hear very well.
Pardon me?
I couldn't hear very well.
You're not audible properly.
Okay. Is there any change in situation of Uyghurs in East Turkestan after the leak of Karkak's list?
Oh, after the leak of Karakash list. No, there has been no change, not from what we know. People are, like, the concentration camps are still there, still present. Millions of people are still being interned. People, I think even it's the other way around. The situation even got worse because of the forced labor issue. That now because we've received evidence that during the lockdown, the national lockdown in China, Uyghurs were being sent across China to these forced labor facilities. I mean, we've had videos that emerged from inside that have kind of showed that. And this is just another, I think, indication that China takes no consideration in Uyghur lives and their well-being or health.
But there is a lot of suppression is there for the Uyghurs, around 3,000 arts or something. They are not liberated.
Yeah.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Fanidarji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hello, I'm audible?
Yeah, you are.
Madam, namaste. Hello.
Yeah,
Hi,
go ahead.
yes, we can hear you.
Madam, for your cause, are you getting any approach to Japan or Russia, Indian government, or you are living country, Canada, and what the response you got? Like, are you doing any liaison with them for your cause?
So the support that we get is mostly from Western countries, as you can imagine. Very few from other places. Japan is, yes, definitely, they're supporting us. I would say, like the Western democracies have been supportive. And that's pretty much all. And like I said, like I've touched on the issue of the Muslim majority countries, very few support from there. And but we are, working on diversifying our support, and we hope that it will bear fruit soon.
Have you approached the Indian government anytime for your cause, and what is the response you got? And you told you approached Japan country. What is the response from them like?
Yeah, the Indian government has been, I guess, in some ways responsive, but not as responsive as we would like. So that's another area we need to kind of push for. Japan has been very much supportive, and we have had, especially in international forums, they've been very supportive and advocating for Uyghur rights. And in terms of, India, even I was in India in November, and I had no problem probably because I was new, but our president, Tulpun Isa, he's a prominent figure in Uyghur advocacy and Uyghur human rights movement. He's still denied access to India because of Chinese influence. That is why he couldn't go to many conferences that were held in India. So that's a major problem. If we're not even allowed to enter India, this is where we should start from.
Madam, what about Canada, madam?
Canada has been supportive as well. Like I said, it's similar to other democratic Western countries.
Russia, madam?
Russia, no chance with Russia.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you touch upon, I know you're fighting for a cause in a democratic way, in a human rights advocacy way, but there are certain sections of Uyghurs who probably believe in taking to violence, right? Probably they feel that there has to be some pain inflicted to seek some liberation from China. Could you say something about them in terms of what they are doing, how they are doing, and what's the kind of repression or what's the response from China? I'm sure they're still there. They're still fighting. So something about them.
I'm going to try to be brief because I have to leave very soon to jump on another call. But I don't... Sure, like these are, there has been incidents, terrorist incidents, but these were isolated incidents, I would say. And the fact that China used these situations or incidents to majorly like crack down on an entire ethnic group just because of that, and use the pretext of terrorism in cracking down and repressing on an ethnic group is woefully wrong. And the thing is, there's no justification for these people who have, committed these things. And I wouldn't try to, find any justification, which is, what they did is wrong, clearly. But at the same time, I think there's a need to look at the bigger picture of oppression. These people have been excluded, I guess, from the rest of society, and they don't have any freedom, nothing is left for them. So they've chosen this option because they saw or they believed at some point that this was the only avenue that was left for them. This kind of happens when everyone else abandons, I guess, no one supports the Uyghurs. People always try to find these other ways, but this is not only true for Uyghurs, but this is also true for other people around the world. These incidents, you have to look at the background of why it happened and the repressive context in which it's been taken. So yeah.
Sure, I understand that. China calls them terrorists, but then what you said, when I'm left with no other option, probably that's something which is.
I'm not in no way encouraging that at all. I am, of course, against any violence, any forms of violence. My point is just China is cracking down severely, not just lightly, severely on an entire ethnic group. And the fact that they've used these, instead of addressing these issues in an appropriate way, in an effective way, they have decided to crack down and assimilate an entire ethnic group. So this is where I think there needs to be change.
Okay, great. I think we'll close it here. Thanks a lot, Zumretay. I think you have, put forth your struggle, your views in a very professional way. And I know you didn't want to take a view on a few things, but I guess that's how it's going to be. Of course, you have a choice to that. It's political views or individualistic views, that's fine. But I think we just take a minute. Umendraji is here. We'll just take his thing and we'll close it. Last question we'll take. Umendraji, can we be quick? Yeah.
Namaste.
Namaste.
I have a question for the lady.
Yeah.
I have been working for the Pakistani Hindu refugees for the past 1 decade, and I've seen the worst of Islamists' action here and the suffering of the Hindus and Sardars and Jains and Christian community of Pakistan. My question is, if you are so proud of your Islamic identity and you want to preserve it, and your Islamic organization is not, OIC is not doing anything, zilch, to support you, and as by your own admission, you have run out of options, we passed the Citizenship Amendment Act about 8 months ago to help the Pakistani Hindus, Christians, and Sikhs of that country. Now, if you want the global Hindu community to reach out to you and help you, then you will have to do something radical. Since the Islamic world is not helping you, why should the Hindu world help you unless we have some quid pro quo? Thank you.
Yeah, I think she's answered it, Umendraji, in a way. She said
I'm sorry,
it's more of it's more of a humanitarian issue. We have a choice not to support them, but then as a civilization, are we okay to see an ethnic cleansing going on next to us? Right? So it's our choice. So that's
I think at the end of the day, it's you support whoever you want, but I think if you want to be on the right side of history, and if you want to have a good moral, I guess, would be to support those in need, whether, no matter what their religious background is, ethnic background is. I think at the end of the day, I'm a very humanist person, and I think if another Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Jew is suffering, I will stand up for them, because a threat to a democracy, or like an injustice somewhere is an injustice everywhere. So for me, this is how I see it. Not everyone agrees with that, of course, but that's okay. But I think if we want to change the world and make the world a better place to live in for everyone to have their voices, we all need to stand up for the oppressed people. That's my view, and I'm not gonna, I guess, try to convince anyone of otherwise. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we have to wind up. Chandrasekhar ji, you can propose a vote of thanks, and then we'll wind up.
Thank you,
Girdharji. We can make it brief.
Yeah, sure. Zumretay, is that, have I pronounced it right?
Zumretay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I had one or two questions, but I'm not going to ask you because I can see you're already late. In any case, thanks for coming onto our dais, and thanks for sharing your views on your issues. I appreciate the way you actually handled some of the questions you have been asked. Impressive. You can see the real activist in you. In any case, thanks a lot for sharing your views, and wish you all the best. Thanks once again.
Thank you.
And thanks to the audience as well who have logged in. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
and wish you all the best. And
Thank you
hope
so
to hope to see that you be in touch with your relatives pretty soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
all.
everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Bharat Mata ki jai.
Bharat Mata ki jai.